Well, hi, and thank you for tuning in today. My name's Seth Gerson. I'm Program Director for K-12 Education here at National Governors Association, and welcome to NGA's webinar spotlighting Maine's efforts to strengthen education for students, families, and schools across the state. Today, I'm honored to engage in a conversation with Joe Marro, Senior Policy Advisor for Governor Janet Mills, and Maine Commissioner of Education, Pender Makin, to provide insights on how they've worked together to advance Governor Mills' education policies and priorities in Maine. Joe has served as a senior policy advisor for Governor Mills since 2020, and before that, he served as director of advocacy for the Portland Regional Chamber of Commerce and as an advisor to U.S. Congresswoman Shelley Pingree of Maine for more than 5 years. Commissioner Makin was nominated as commissioner by Governor Mills in December 2018 and began in her current role in January 2019. Before that, the commissioner served as an assistant superintendent for Brunswick School District for more than 3 years, as a principal for nearly 12 years, and as a classroom teacher for 7 years. She also co-founded the Collaborative for Perpetual Innovation in 2015, an organization providing professional development in the areas of school safety, school climate, and trauma-informed practices. So welcome to both of you, and thanks so much for joining us. So I want to start with that partnership between the governor's office and the Maine Department of Education, between the two of you. How have you worked together to move the governor's education agenda forward? What have been the keys to doing so effectively? So Joe, let's start with you and then we'll move to the commissioner.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Seth, and thanks so much for having both of us here today. It's great to be here with you. It's funny, Pender and I had to kind of laugh at this question because it's more of a question of when aren't we working together? When aren't we collaborating? It's easier to answer, I think, than when are we? We talk on basically a daily basis. We really work hand in glove in terms of the things that are coming out of the legislature, things that are popping up in schools, whether that's from representatives of the management association or the teachers union or the curriculum leaders or others. And it's a daily sort of grind of making sure we're up on the latest issues that are being faced by Maine schools, and then sort of collaborating on how we want to ensure that the state is helping in a streamlined way that isn't duplicating efforts and they aren't getting multiple answers from the governor's office and the department. We want to make sure it's streamlined for schools. Things are hard enough for them with information from different streams all the time. So we're trying to make sure that we are speaking with one voice. Pender, you want to add there?
Yeah, thanks, Joe. No, I agree 100%. And let's say clear communication, the two of us together. I mean, we are lockstep. I consider you to be the great translator and smoother over person who, you keep your finger on the pulse of what's going on with the legislators and what's in their heads. What are their individual and collective goals and priorities? And then we discuss those, and I've got my finger on the pulse of what's happening in the schools across our state. And I think together we work really well with all the constituent groups. We have a biweekly meeting. We have every week. So every other week we meet with what we call the ed orgs, and those are the leaders of the organizations who represent the facets of education. So that would be including the MEA, so that the state teachers union leadership, and the MPA, Principals Association, and then the MSMA, which would be the superintendents and school board members, and they each have their own association and leadership. Also the curriculum directors, the business managers, and I think who the other groups, CTE, of course. So we pull that team together, and we have done it since the very beginning of our administration, to make sure that we have absolutely clear and aligned, which it's very hard when you think about some of those groups who are at this Zoom. in other states, you will find that they are typically, perhaps misaligned or have competing interests. And we worked so hard, thank goodness, during 2019 to get those groups to work together. So we problem solved a few very difficult bills with some high feelings on both sides, and we successfully processed our way through that. And having done that, when COVID hit, we then had a team who did not have, we were able to get around, and we'll get to that, I know, but we were able to not experience some of the very negative, divisive discourse and disagreements that were happening in other states, where those different groups went to their separate corners and battled things out. We worked as 100% a team. I would attribute a lot of our alignment throughout all of that to Joe's presence as well in those meetings.
It's so great to hear. It sounds like a real collective effort, and this idea of meeting together with key constituencies so that you're on the same page, the clear communication that can happen not only off meeting, but then also being able to hear the same sentiments from those groups and be able to then talk to one another based on the same information sounds really critical. Joe, wanted to just look at one particular piece that I know that there's been some collaboration on, the Maine's Children's Cabinet that Governor Mills reinstated in 2019. Can you talk a little bit about what the catalyst was for reinstating that Children's Cabinet and how you've seen success from cross-agency collaboration?
Yeah, I think the governor coming in 2019 looked at a need for cross-agency collaboration. Some of the different agencies working on very similar efforts, but the need to streamline some of those and to bring them all under one roof, so everybody was working off the same sheet of music. So, I think we took 5 different agencies to look to coordinate policies and programs focused on children and youth. And now we have a regular group of staff that meet twice a month. They've established a number of different working groups to ensure that we're collaborating and coordinating on key issues that we're all working together on. There's kind of 2 goals, the cabinet, to ensure all children enter kindergarten prepared to succeed, and then to ensure that all youth enter adulthood healthy and connected to the workforce and or education to further their education. So it's a team, like I said, 5 different agencies. And, recently I think they're proud of a program called Career Exploration, looking at grants to increase capacity at schools and community-based organizations. Helps for students to understand their career opportunities a little better, build foundational skills, employers through work-based learning. We're really proud of the work that's been done there. And during the first year of that program, which was school year 22-23, the program served about 3,500 students, and around 3,000 of those, so the vast majority, ended up participating in a paid work experience. So great work done there by a group of folks that are all connected to the Children's Cabinet. So we're seeing the benefits certainly during this administration.
And then, because of 5 different agencies, when you were getting started on sort of bringing those together, maybe for the first time in a long time, any sort of lessons learned for some of the offices that might be on the line as they're sort of forming that kind of children's cabinet, whether Joe or Commissioner, as that was kind of coming together?
I would say maybe, I don't know, Pender, I don't know if you have thoughts on that, just because I wasn't there at the very beginning. So maybe you had thoughts better than I would.
Well, I would say because we were all, we were a new administration when we started. I think that was key because people hadn't had time to get very possessive of their lanes, as it were. And so I would say that one of the best things that Governor Mills did was to immediately institute the Children's Cabinet. And so we started off our work as a cabinet team, coordinating and cooperating and setting those really aligned goals for kids and for young adults who are parents of the youngest and most fragile kids. And we were able to really generate a kind of a 2-generational approach that's much more comprehensive than just the discrete little initiatives that might otherwise have been born within our separate departments.
And Seth, that CTE career exploration program I was mentioning, that was DOE, DECD, DOL, so our labor, our economic development folks, our Office of Policy Innovation in the Future, as well as the Department of Education. So all of those agencies that would have been working on a piece of that, maybe siloed, were able to kind of come together on that work.
Well, thank you both. And yeah, true children and youth cabinet, because it sounds like you're really focused on that kindergarten side and then also the career exploration CTE. So great to hear about the cross-agency collaboration there. Commissioner, I want to just shift a little bit to some of the work I know you've been leading on, as well as the governor, and that is the BAR initiative. And I know you've been as part of our NGA project as well, Academic Supports and Student Wellbeing Project, the Building Assets Reducing Risks Initiative. Can you talk a little bit about the overview of how Maine has embedded BAR into a number of schools and the impact that you're seeing from that initiative?
Oh, I'd be so happy to. And this also was born in many ways within that children's cabinet context. Early on, we talk a lot about ACEs, all of us do, the adverse childhood experiences and trauma that create risk factors in young people and inhibit their success academically, behaviorally, socially, and health wise. And we had, as a whole cabinet, moved toward, let's look at, because there's emerging wonderful research to show that positive childhood experiences actually cause mitigating protective factors that can actually undo that, what used to seem like a life sentence. Well, you have so many ACEs, you're going to really be in trouble. And so the assets-based work got us looking into the BAR model, which is in and of itself, it's built on developing developmental thriving indicators or assets within students at developmentally appropriate stages throughout their lives, elementary school age, middle school, and the thriving indicators for adolescents. It directly teaches and builds and strengthens those assets within students and creates systems within schools that maximize whatever a school might already be doing that's working well, and that can bring into focus those things that are initiatives or efforts that schools have been working on with mixed results. It gets all of the adults within a school talking to one another about the kids, not just about the curriculum, not just about, but also about how's everybody doing. And we were so encouraged once we looked further into the model to see the decades now of empirical studies and research that almost seemed too good to be true, to be honest. I mean, it was almost a panacea. Schools that engage in the BAR approach see academic outcomes, they see behavioral outcomes, attendance and engagement outcomes, and they even have more recent data. Oh, they're also a SAMHSA model substance use prevention program. And one of their more recent and interesting studies is on the impact of the BAR program on educator job satisfaction, the sense of efficacy in their work, and their likelihood to be persisting in their positions, for 5 years or further out into the future. So we put the word out to invest. We wanted to invest some of our federal emergency relief funding because this targeted these outcomes really fell, within the whole student approach that we have been fostering since the pandemic. And we put out the all call, and it's a full restructuring. Let's just be clear. To say yes to BAR is we're going to restructure the way we do the things in our school. We're going to change our schedules, perhaps change the team structures, and we're going to collect new data, or we're going to assimilate data we already have been collecting in a different way. And so it's a heavy lift. We offered this to the Maine schools last May, and we thought we would get 4 responses. We had 71 schools say, yes, please, we want to join Department of Education's initiative. And since that time, we've had amazing results, and it's it seems to be spreading, educator to educator and school leader to school leader, because we are now up to, I believe we're going to have 118 bar schools going into next fall. We just put out a second round and had additional schools sign on saying, yes, we want to do this. We're hearing from our colleagues some of the results that we had collected in January. So year one, and bar is a 3-year transitional program. After the 3rd year, there's no more cost, there's no more required coaching or so it's essentially you get set up and you run as a bar school. So in that sense, it's a wonderful investment for one-time funding, because once you've turn that corner, you're good to go. In as of January, and it's gotten even better since, we just learned, but I don't have the data. But we have students in elementary schools having overall double-digit increases in their math and reading proficiency scores. We have elementary, middle, and high school, also double-digit reduction in chronic absenteeism as it's defined in our state. And we also have seen our schools are reporting anywhere between a 25% and a 60% drop in discipline referrals. These are just high level survey, data that we've collected as of January. So we're looking at September, just a handful of months, and they were already on that trajectory. And just recently we convened with 10 or more bar schools in a national conference related to bar, and these anecdotes that I don't have the hard data for now it continued to get better. And we can also say that 100% of the schools that started in September of this year are reporting more positive results than they had anticipated. So, and they all have different goals and so forth, but it's been wonderful.
Thanks, Commissioner. Sounds great. Not only the pickup from so many schools in such a relatively short amount of time, 118 schools, but that you're already seeing some of these year one impacts on not only academically, but chronic absenteeism that we know is such a big issue across the country, bipartisanly, and then the reduction in discipline as well, referrals as well. Joe, I want to stay with student well-being, or as the commissioner said, a whole student approach. Can you share some of the governor's top priorities in this area? We noticed, sort of the schools meals for all legislation that Governor Mills championed just recently. So, but other initiatives that you have are in this area.
Yeah, sure. And just real quick on bar, the governor is really proud of the work that Commissioner Makin and the department have done on bar schools. And I remember we have a weekly cabinet call with the entire cabinet, and the governor usually joins those. And I remember when she first heard about bar on one of those calls and was very excited about it and wanted to hear more and wanted to learn more about the work that was going to be done. And so I know she's proud of the work that's being done there. So big thanks to Commissioner Makin. And yeah, you mentioned school meals. Certainly, it's 3 years ago now, which is hard to believe, but the legislature passed and Governor Mills signed the bill to make school meals free to all public school students and public school students in town academies. And so that's been around now for a few years. Proud of that legislation. It was bipartisan support for that legislation, which Governor Mills worked to ensure. And we've seen a lot of we got a lot of good feedback from schools on how that's what kind of impact that's having on students and on schools. And it's kind of staying with the student and staff well-being topic. Another piece that I know the Pender's department and our Department of Health and Human Services has worked together on is expanding school-based health centers. There initially was some federal COVID relief funds to expand a number of school-based health centers, and then we've worked to secure additional funds for that. And out of that work, We developed school-based services working group to ensure that we're sharing information about those initiatives and where community services are being provided in schools. And out of that work, an even smaller working group was formed, and that includes staff from DOE and DHHS working on aligning behavioral health screenings for youth in schools to avoid duplication and confusion at the local level, and ensuring that those services are best serving our students. So, it all kind of falls under that umbrella of student well-being, but it starts, I think, with the governor and the commissioner's commitment to, like Pender said, that whole child approach, and looking at how it's services in schools can be more than just academics. So, really proud of the work that's been done over the last few years there.
And we do have a few other initiatives related to the governor's commitment to well-being overall of students and staff. And I guess you can't overstate the Meals for All. It's different from in most other states where they have decided to create, a universal-ish meals program. This is literally everyone eats breakfast, everyone eats lunch, and the stigma is gone. So we no longer have the problem of hungry kids in our state. And we're proud to say that we just discovered in a recent survey, Maine school lunches in and of themselves are among the healthiest served in the US. So we're very proud of our meal program. But also, of course, there's the bar. And there are professional learning opportunities that we're creating for teachers. A train the trainer model in a process called the regulated classroom is something that we put out there. It basically leverages the brain science related to the parasympathetic nervous system, teaches teachers how to access their own parasympathetic nervous system and to be very highly regulated adults at the helm of a classroom, especially when they are confronted with, as I think people are seeing around the nation, a new level of behavioral challenges that kids are bringing in the door. So it helps the adults themselves to stay regulated. And then there are strategies and lessons to help the children to also access those self-calming, self-regulating behaviors and strategies. And that's been incredibly popular. We put the offer out there a few times so far. Every time it sells out statewide. And and by sells out, we've been providing it for free. But people, we end up at our absolute limit. And so that's been incredibly well received. Also, the work the governor inspired on pre-K expansion and supporting early childhood education. And, that of course spans all of our children cabinet work. And we're also paying special attention to inclusion. It's a place we struggle as a state, and we have some goals there around ensuring that children who have disabilities are included within their regular classroom settings to be learning alongside their typically developing peers. And finally, I would just throw in there the career exploration and those projects that the governor also has inspired in terms of making sure that every student leaves our school system ready for the world of higher education or a meaningful career or workplace adventure coming right after that. So those are what we've done a lot in terms of the governor's goals for our children and their well-being.
Well, thank you both, and lots of initiatives. And for our viewers, we'll certainly in the resources that'll be attached to this webinar, we'll include information around the Children's Cabinet. We'll include around the school meals, the bar, the school-based health, as Joe mentioned, and some of these other initiatives that are all leading towards addressing well-being overall. And Commissioner, you mentioned a little around staff well-being and some of the self-regulation modeling, the professional development that's being done there. We know that, like so many governors and states, that Governor Mills and yourself have made educator recruitment and retention a real top priority, and also as it's a challenge in Maine as well. Can you talk to us about the state's efforts in this area, including the Teach Maine initiative?
I would be happy to. Yes. So the hashtag Teach Maine initiative or set, it's really a framework of a set of priorities that we are supporting throughout the field. The four um, key strategies are around recruitment and retention, around diversifying the education workforce, around professional growth and leadership opportunities, and elevating and kind of celebrating the education profession as well. And within, say, the recruitment and retention work, we have partnered with an agency called Live and Work in Maine, and they're, of course, an economic community development company, and they have helped us with nationwide recruitment strategies for enticing people to consider a career in the beautiful state of Maine. So if you were getting off a subway in New York City, for example, you might confront a large picture of the mountains and the beautiful coastline of our state that says, come teach here. And there's a way to immediately interact with a statewide job board that we put up. So all schools, still, I'm sure they do their own local recruitment and hiring advertisement, but we've also made available for free statewide a job board in the state of Maine so that anybody who's interested in, a potential career in our state in education can go to a one-stop shopping kind of place where they are able to do that. And we've seen a huge uptick in out-of-state applicants as a result, I think, of some of that work. We also aggressively highlight the great work that's happening in schools across the state. And we're trying to change the conversation, frankly, Seth. We really are trying to make sure that people are aware that the schools are much more than what is portrayed in, some of the limited portraits you might typically see in terms of, this test score or that test score. We're really trying to make sure that our public in our state of Maine, at least, are aware of the heroic efforts and successes that are happening in classrooms. Really cool stuff. We've also very much dedicated ourselves to recognizing and augmenting, I guess, the professionalism of Maine's educators. One of the efforts, we wrote a competitive grant for a federal program in the first summer, in the very first months of COVID. I don't know what we were thinking, but it was for an innovation grant, and we were awarded $16 million that we used to train educators and school leaders in using design thinking and the principles of, like really social engineering for increasing results and in schools. And then the funds were also used to provide grants to educators and school leaders who wanted to create an innovative way to support students. And now there is a thriving cohort across the state of project is called REV, R-R-E-V, REV. And we have a huge cohort of people who have been trained in design thinking and who have created pilot projects and who now share those projects and their successes with others who adopt them and make those work for their settings. So, and I think when I talk about that cohort, it reminds me it's another deliberate strategy. We have worked very hard. One of the things that really strengthen a workforce, especially in something that can be so isolating as education, is we have created groups of educators who work together and in areas of common interest. So we have our MLTI technology and digital learning cohort. We have, that was another, anyway. And we also have, we have the REV groups, and those are people who, now that across the state, there are these amazing outdoor education programs and classrooms that are held outdoors now, not because of COVID, but because it's amazing and engaging for kids to be out in nature while they're learning. So all of those types of, and we give them a forum, we give them a place to come together. And we're working with a community-based group called Educate Maine. It's a group of business leaders who are deeply invested in education in our state, hence their name. And we're working with them to develop something called what's it called? The Teach Maine Center, I believe it's called. And that center is going to it'll be a bricks and mortar place in our state. We don't know yet where, but it will mostly be a community of educators from across the state who can pursue their interests, their professional development, leadership opportunities, and growth opportunities. So those are a few of the things. Also, I'm rambling, but in terms of recruitment and building our workforce, we have created a number of paid internship programs and teacher residencies and educator apprenticeships. And we also are looking at pathways, and we have not yet successfully, because we're not in charge of the certification rules, but we have proposed a couple of times some changes to those rules that would make it much more palatable and reasonable for people who are mid-career, or for people who are new to our state or who are new to our nation, for that matter, to come in and through a competency-based alternative pathway that I dream of but have not successfully created. But we're hopeful that we will at some point have something like that will help us to diversify the workforce, which is extremely important for us. And throughout these efforts, the good news is, in this past calendar year, we have issued more first-time certifications for educators than were issued in the year prior to COVID. Isn't that great? So I'm hopeful. It doesn't mean we don't have a teacher shortage and that we're not in the same crisis as everyone else, but I feel like we are all hands on deck to address that.
Well, thank you, Commissioner. And I think that's really what stood out to us about Teach Maine, is that the focus not only on recruitment, but retention and the specificity around the strategies along the continuum of how you're helping to support educators from across the state. And I really like what you said around the leadership opportunities. Again, not only specifying strategies that can be helpful for growing more teacher leaders, but actually having the programs that from the state level even that are providing those opportunities for teacher leadership in many different forms. Joe, I don't know if you wanted to add on to some of the educator workforce work that the commissioner spoke about, or I know that there's been a lot of priority on education just this past legislative session over the past years. If you want to talk a little bit about some of the more recent efforts of the governor.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Seth. The governor is the first governor to meet the 55% state share of public education, going all the way back to a 2004 referendum in Maine. And it took about 15 years to get there. But the governor is proud to say that we have met the 55% state share of public education, and have continued to provide 55% state share, and intend to do so, and are excited to be able to meet that. You mentioned the recent legislative session that just finished up just a couple of weeks ago. The governor signed a supplemental budget, and that included an increase to the minimum wage for ed techs and support staff. That also was an effort from multiple groups around the state, and I think the governor was proud to bring folks together to work through that issue. At the beginning of the administration, the governor signed legislation increasing the minimum teacher salary up to $40,000 a year, which, as the governor has said, is still too low, but certainly we're proud to take that step back in 2019. And in this past legislative session, there was a bill to raise the teacher minimum salary up to $50,000, which didn't get through. But I do know that that will be a part of a conversation that's ongoing, and a larger study that was legislation the governor signed to take a broader look at how we fund public education in the state of Maine, and looking at ensuring we can sustainably fund 55% of public education going forward. That includes the workforce and all of the other costs that are incorporated into that. I've mentioned CTE a few times, but I'll just say the governor is also proud of the increased funding provided to CTE centers around the state over the course of the administration to help students gain access to the trades and different types of careers that they may want to pursue or may want to study at one of our community colleges around the state. Pender mentioned pre-K, certainly a priority for the governor in investing in public pre-K and working with districts around the state to try and ensure they can provide that in a way that works for them and works with the community. So I'll stop there, I suppose, but a lot of good work and a lot more work that still needs to be done on some of those issues.
And free community college. That's
yes. I know I was keeping it K-12, but certainly if you talk higher ed, free community college, the governor was able to instill free community college for students 2 years ago, and really proud of that. And we've seen great results. We've seen a significant uptick in enrollment at the community colleges and enrollment from first generation college students as well. So really proud of that program. Thank you, Pender.
Well, sounds like really funding increases across the board in terms of education overall, teachers, and then across the continuum from pre-K to community college, post-secondary, and CTE. So thanks for sharing that, Joe. Feels like we want to make sure that we talk a little bit about, and Commissioner, you had mentioned this a little earlier in the webinar, but we know the impact that the pandemic had on the entire education system, including in Maine. You both were in your positions, at least for part of it, Joe, and the commissioner from pre to during and now post. What do you see as sort of the lessons learned from the pandemic, and where do you see the continuing challenges and the need for support, both academically and holistically, for students in schools? Commissioner, we'll start with you and then go to Joe.
So lessons learned. I guess I can talk about lessons that were learned in a way that was positive, and then some lessons learned where, we learned the hard way on a couple of things. But starting with a positive, that group of education leaders statewide that we had immediately at the inception of our administration, we had convened them, and we worked extremely hard to build trust from the field to the Department of Education. And that hadn't been in place for close to a decade prior. Without the trust of the field, without a team of leaders statewide going into the unforeseen pandemic, we would have been in a very different place. There is absolutely no question in my mind that building those relationships and building that statewide trust network, the communication was lockstep. In those cases, we were just very fortunate to have been hyper-focused right from the get-go, because we knew we wouldn't have a good impact at all. We wouldn't have any impact on the field if they didn't have trust. We would just be an irrelevant bureaucratic, agency that they avoided largely. And instead, we were the go-to. People came to the department for assistance, for support, for guidance. Another lesson learned was I would say the existence of the Children's Cabinet and other efforts by the governor to bring our cabinet members together. We were able to be already working with our Health and Human Services team in a variety of other ways. So it was a very natural partnership when it was most needed. And I think we were able to avoid a lot of pitfalls that we saw happening elsewhere because of that. So those are lessons we learned that were very positive. Lessons that we learned, the hard way in the pandemic, just how how vulnerable so many of our most disadvantaged students and families, in a time of crisis like this, how vulnerable they truly were. And I'm very proud of the immediate action on the part of our team to address those vulnerabilities. But those were very hard lessons. Also, our state's connectivity certainly wasn't what it ought to have been when people needed to immediately interact with the world through a Zoom. Um, some some other lessons I think we learned is that well, a lesson that was learned by society, how important schools are to the community, they're the center that holds there's the centripetal force that keeps a society together, our local public schools. And when they were not in operation, we saw, such a divide and such a just a tale of different Maines, I guess, during that time. And I think people began to see how important our educators and our schools were to society. And I think that was an outcome, a lesson of some sort. And then I think the opportunities that we had to say, go for a competitive grant so that we can cause innovation to happen, because we needed to completely rethink. We didn't want to have schools shut down and then reopen as, basically the same as they were. And I'm very proud to say that I can visit schools all across the state today and see the lasting impact of those innovations that are no longer necessary because of a pandemic, but yet are creating positive experiences for kids across the board. And also attending to the whole student was an outcome from all of this work. We realized that, students who are hungry or who are dysregulated, who don't feel a sense of belonging or connection to their school setting, those students are not going to learn. They're not going to perform as well. They're not going to engage. And so we've been able to rework our overall strategic plan in terms of what we hope to see statewide, um, to better serve students on into the future. Those would be some of the lessons I think we learned.
Yeah, I don't have a ton to add on that. Sort of generally speaking, just I think Pender said that really well, put that really eloquently, and it's bringing me back a little bit. Probably is for you too, Pender, of some of those really early morning or really late night calls of trying to respond to whatever was happening in late 2020, early 2021, and just trying to lean on that foundation of coordination and cooperation that we built, not only our office and Pender's team, but as Pender was saying, the team of educators and administrators out in the field, who leaned on us for the latest information and where to go and how to respond to some of those emerging issues. A couple of specific things I guess I would mention too is Pender alluded to one of them, when we realized that some of the connectivity in our state, internet access and that sort of thing was not up to par. The governor did devote some CARES Act money, some federal relief money to the Connect Kids Now project. That feels like forever ago now, but that was fall 2020, to get kids connected and be able to access school via online from home. And I think another program that is ended up, I don't know if it's a lesson, but it's something that we kind of have carried on post COVID, if you want to call it that, and that's the Learning Facilitators program that has been a great success. It's a program that ensures at the time back in COVID, in the middle of COVID, that there were folks in the classroom helping the students there in person when the teacher was teaching online, was teaching from a different location. And that program has now evolved into a program at one of our community colleges that allows for folks to more easily gain access to certification and get more quickly working in classrooms, which also helps with some of the shortages that are, a nationwide problem, but certainly an issue we're working on here in Maine. So just a couple of sort of more specific, I guess, things that came out of COVID for us where we saw a need. And thanks to the commissioner and her team and the cooperation of educators and administrators around the state, we were able to put some of those in place.
Thank you both. And I really like how you spoke about the sort of human infrastructure that was built not only at the state agency level by having that children's cabinet in place, but then your trust with the field of being able to, when the pandemic did hit, already having built that trust and relationships, and then some of the outgrowth policy wise of this renewed focus on a whole student, the connectivity gaps, and using funds to make sure to address that, and then this learning facilitators program that has continued to bear fruit even past the pandemic. Well, we always like to end on an optimistic, a positive note, and sort of look ahead. So for both of you, what are you most excited about in the work that's upcoming? What should we be watching out for in the months and years ahead? Commissioner, you want to go first, and then Joe?
Sure. Well, I am really excited about the proliferation of the bar schools. Um, I am excited about where we've launched a statewide Measure What Matters campaign. So we're trying to stop the very narrow measures that are typically used nationally in our state to decide what's great about a school. And so we're working statewide with focus groups and business communities. What is it that people value most in their education and system and in our local schools? So I'm very excited about that work. And I think, the Teach Maine Center is coming into its own, and that's going to, in a sense, be a place where we can hand over these, hard gathered cohorts of like-minded educators who are out there doing the great work, and they're going to be safely positioned on into, they'll be administration proof in a sense. They'll be strong among one another on into the future. So I think we have many reasons to be hopeful.
Yeah, I would echo all of those, certainly. In terms of things I'm looking forward to, I'll give you a couple of short term, I guess, and then maybe one more extended term. I just was communicating with the person at one of our high schools who, Pender, the ELOs, extended learning opportunities, that we're very proud of. And Pender's team has worked very hard on to expand those opportunities that are similar to sort of an internship or an apprenticeship or a paid work experience, but within schools. And it's been a really big success. And I actually heard from one of the ELO directors about coming to talk to a couple of high school students who are doing their ELO in sort of government work and public service. And so I'm excited to go and talk to those students. I think it's a kind of a nice intersection there of they want to hear from me about my work, but I'm actually more excited about the fact that they're doing those ELOs and that they're getting that experience. So that's really cool. And also, we haven't mentioned it, I don't think, on this call yet, but the Maine Outdoor Learning Initiative that Pender's like, wait, oh my God. The governor used COVID relief funds to get that started. It's a outdoor learning initiative that brings students in Maine, either from some of the more rural areas and inland areas to the coast, or the more urban areas of the state, or vice versa, bringing some of those kids from the coast up to the woods and the mountains of Maine, with the goal of getting those students outside during the summer months and getting some learning experience that is outside of the traditional classroom. And we have some really great programs that are going to be happening this summer. And so I haven't told Pender this yet, but I think I really want to try to be able to visit one of those I didn't get there last summer, and I think that would be really nice to be able to go and visit and see some of the work that's being done there. So also looking forward to that.
I was
Um,
able to visit. It's amazing. I recommend it.
Exactly. Yes. So I'm excited about that. And then longer term, I guess I just say we have the study on how we can sustainably fund public education going forward in the state. I know that the department and our office will be heavily involved in that and ensuring that I talked about 55% state share and ensuring that the state is paying its share of public education in Maine and making sure that's sustainable, not only through the rest of our administration, but far past the Mills administration is our hope to leave Maine on a good footing well into the future for funding public education. So I'd say that as well.
Sounds like lots of great work happening now and lots to look forward to in the future. And I love the thoughts that both of you left around the students as well that you're going to see because you're both leaders in the state, and so growing that next generation of leaders is so critical. So just great to keep passing on that leadership. So thank you both for a great conversation and sharing your insights, sharing your expertise with our viewers today. And again, viewers, please note all of the resources that we discuss will be attached to the recording once it's released on the NGA website. So thank you again, Joe and Commissioner. And until next time, thanks for tuning in and hope you have a great day.